Yo, what's up? This is Toru, and in a way, so are you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a music producer, artist, and entrepreneur. I make music for that space between the dance floor and the bedroom, which has been streamed millions of times and been licensed by brands big and small, including companies like Apple. I believe that regardless of what you produce, whether it be music, art, physical goods, or even spreadsheets, you have a process, whether you know it or not. To explore this further, I created the Producerhead podcast. Producerhead is a place to have conversations with other producers about their experience and process to share what works and what doesn't, to help each of us learn and improve our own processes along the way. Today's guest is nothing new, a Brooklyn-born producer, beatmaker, and artist focused on creating worlds out of music. In 2023, he was signed to the Los Angeles-based Pup Records, which has been considered a top-tier label for years, releasing projects from a wide variety of artists, including Mike Gao, Nosaj Thing, Free the Robots, Dibia, Jonwayne, and Daedelus, just legends. Welcome to part 2 of this 2-part conversation with Nothing New, where we discuss developing the ability to view consequences and results with more objectivity, applying that objectivity to content creation and the resulting feedback, how Nothing New demonstrates his values and contributes to community, encouragement and ideas for sharing your own voice, and Nothing New shares technical and emotive perspective for mixing. So, if you're working on a mix, get ready to take in some gems. As always, the conversation found its own way to some other interesting areas and topics to help you rethink how you're working and where you may be able to experiment. If you haven't already, go back and listen to part 1 with Nothing New to take in more of his experience and insights. I assure you, there are many. If you've already heard part 1 with Nothing New, I highly recommend you go back and check out an episode that you may have missed, and get ready, there is more coming. Let's get into part 2 of this 2-part conversation with Nothing New.
Look at somebody like Designer, who, got the biggest artist in the world in Kanye West to look at his first single and be like, we're going to sign you to good music. That didn't cure anything for him long term. You know what I mean? Like, you look at all these artists that had that life-changing, here's everything you could ever want in a deal, and it still didn't address whatever they were feeling prior to that deal, and it wasn't sustainable for them, so they couldn't even hold it once they had it. It slips through. So it taught me the value of building something with your hands slowly, because you know how it's built. So when you know how something is built, you can maintain it versus somebody giving you a thing. If I build a Porsche with my bare hands, I know everything about that Porsche. If anything happens, I know how to fix it. If somebody gives me a Porsche, I got to give somebody else money to maintain it, to do other things to it. And I might not even have the money to maintain that vehicle. You know what I mean? Like, differences.
It's really interesting, man, because I'm just thinking about the longevity piece of this, right? I think from the outside, a lot of us would say, okay, if somebody as big as Kanye or, choose any of the big 3 to invest in you, that you're going to be, okay, that's it. That's longevity, right? I have this big machine behind me. But I think what we're kind of coming to here is that that's not necessarily where longevity comes from.
Longevity is structured. Longevity comes from you thinking long game. Because sometimes, like, if you got a cash infusion and decided to go spend it all on $1 million studio, like, and that's a studio. I'm not even talking about buying chains or cars or houses. If you went and got a studio to do the thing that people are investing in you to do, but you couldn't maintain that studio, now you're at a deficit. Instead of thinking long term, like, okay, let me put some of this money away. Let me pay off some of my long-standing debt, and let me keep working the way that I've been working that got me here. Let me take some of that and invest it into my processes here. Let me upgrade some of the things that will help me make more money versus just, okay, I got my dream, so let's get all the things that I dreamed about. Now that I have that one dream, I can get my dream studio, my dream house, my dream girlfriend, my dream car. Like, all this stuff is material. It's not anything that can be sustained beyond, like, dumping money into something. So it's more about looking at your entire life as a long game. Like, I consider myself a lifer with music. I'm not going to stop doing this anytime soon. And shout out to Obliv. I talked to him over the summer at a show. I didn't even know he had, like, a family that he's been building. And he broke it down to me as, like, it's peaks and valleys. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's way up and sometimes it's way low. But when you look at it zoomed out, it's all on a trend upward. Just hit my light, but it's all on a trend upward.
That's what's up, man. So, I I really love your perspective on investing in yourself in a long-term way and maintaining the patience. I think the challenge with that is it becomes like a bigger project mentally, at least when I think about it, right? I'm like, okay, this is now a really big thing if I'm thinking about an indefinite period of time, the rest of my life. So how do you go about managing that in a way so that you can move forward day to day?
Last part, pin that day to day. Stop thinking about it as your life. You know what I mean? You don't know how long you have on this planet at all. At any given day, you could go. Um, and for me, I look at that as permission to fully go after what I want to do every single day. And I think I don't want to say that and have it like conflated to meaning like, okay, every day I have to grind. It means waking up every day and being honest and how much you can put towards something and how much rest you need and how much external stimulation, be it friends or shows or going out to eat, whatever. It's looking at every day as a new day, another opportunity to work towards an overarching goal, but it's not to like burn yourself out driving towards the thing every day. That's not like it's all everything is in the interest of sustainability and longevity, including the quest towards longevity has to be sustainable to your mental health, to your physical health. It can't be at the detriment of your relationships, of all these things. You have to be able to look at it and say, okay, slow and steady in everything I'm doing, be honest with what I'm feeling, and execute on that and not execute on keeping up with what somebody else is doing. That doesn't matter.
How do you think about success on a day-to-day basis?
It's a moving target. Success is what you deem it to be. And that can change every day. That can change all the time. So again, it's back to thinking of everything as true or false. So what I deem as successful today might not be the same thing that's successful tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like I could wake up today and have a life altering experience that completely upends everything that I'm doing. Somebody could pass away, or I can move to another state, and that completely upends everything I'm doing. Now, if I look at success as something that is immutable and that stands still, then at that point, I can fail at any point. You know what I mean? Like I could immediately fail. Like success is this, and anything that's not this is failure. But when you look at it day to day and say, okay, as long as I'm honest to what I'm feeling, I'm successful in what I'm doing. Then you open up the gray area for what different measures of success can be. Success can be as easy as I woke up this morning and I am not dead and everything still works. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like there's different levels to success.
absolutely. Is it something that you consciously define on an ongoing basis?
I wouldn't say consciously, but I do think I check in every now and then to think about what success is to me, especially when I'm up against it. You know what I mean? When I start feeling like I'm failing, then I check in to see like, okay, well, why do I feel like I'm failing? What is making me feel like I'm failing? Let's take inventory of these feelings and understand what's making me feel like failing and try and address what I'm measuring as success. So like if I put out a piece of content and it doesn't do numbers like I wanted it to, and I'm feeling like, damn, what a waste of time. I failed. I should be able to look at that introspectively and say, okay, I didn't fail. I had an idea. I wanted to do it. I executed it to the highest of my ability. I put it out there. There's any number of reasons why I didn't do the numbers that I thought it did. I've learned already. That's success to me. If I can learn, then I've succeeded.
So this also links to something that we've talked about before, which is sort of that need to bring like a level of objectivity and like distance to how you evaluate things. So can you speak a
Mhm.
little bit more about that? Like how did you develop that for yourself and understand? Because it's also linked in a way to what we were talking about in terms of being able to encourage yourself. Because if you can parse that out and see it, you can see it more on an events-based way and not get caught up in, I don't know, things that can spiral you out, with negative self-talk or discouragement or opinions of other people.
Experience is the best teacher in all things. So I think as I progressed and went further and further with things, I started getting an increased perspective and understanding of things. So for example, when I first started out, a lot of the things that made me feel bad was like reaching out to people that I was a fan of and not getting a response back. And I'd be like, what the hell? Like, I sent a message, you should have seen that. I saw you tweet something, you should have seen that. Or like any number of different reasons that I could have been pissed off at that person. But as things progress and I get busier and I get more involved in different facets of like doing this artistic journey, this career, or whatever you might call it, I start to look at it and be like, oh, well, maybe they're just overwhelmed at their phone. I'm overwhelmed at my phone all the time. I'll see a text message and be like, oh, no, not today. I'm doing 20 other things right now. I got to go back to that when my brain is ready to handle that. So I think there's the golden rule that always guides everything, and it should. It's like elementary, but people lose it as they go through, and it's treat others how you'd like to be treated. So I know that if I'm feeling overwhelmed with communications and I'm not, like I missed an email or um, I didn't respond in a timely manner, I don't want to be that person to somebody else that's hounding them saying like, yo, why didn't you look at this? What if their family member died? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's on the other end of that screen. So I look at all of that and I let it color how I move throughout everything. I trust people based on intention, which means it takes me a little bit longer to trust people. You get what I mean? Like, I can't just immediately assume that you're a trustworthy person. I see it in action. I see how you move in action, and then I can say, okay, now when I do something and they rub me the wrong way, or now when they do something and they rub me the wrong way with what they did, I can look at it from a point of I don't know this person to be any more than what they've shown me to be. So this is outside of that. So maybe something's wrong. Let me give them the benefit of the doubt because something might be off. If they do it again, then I can say, nah, okay, there's something off about you. It's not something wrong in your life. There's just something that's not clicking between me and you. And then even with that, I can look at that and say, that's a you problem. That's personal. I didn't do anything to you. I'm not trying to hurt you. So if you're coming at me left, even though I was coming at you right, I can't really take that personal.
I want to talk a little bit about how you apply that same kind of level of objectivity to content and all of this stuff, because you're very active and post a lot of engaging content on social media, and you post a variety of different things in terms of what each kind of piece of content may contain. And let's say you post something and it doesn't perform as well, and maybe it's something that you're more excited about than usual and it doesn't perform as well, and how you deal with that and what it looks like.
Remind myself of why I was excited about it. There's plenty of shit that I've done where I was like, man, this is gonna kill it. And it did nothing. You know what I mean? Like even songs I've written where I'm like, yo, that one, I love it so much. It's gonna do so much work. And I put it out and people are like, I skipped that one. I don't really care for that one. This other one that you spent 5 minutes on is fire. So I need to remind myself in those moments that I was excited about that. That doesn't mean everybody else is going to be excited about it, but I was. So by me taking an idea and turning it into a physical thing, I've done my work for me. I don't need to be upset that it didn't get received well or did get received well. You know what I mean? I just need to be come to terms with the fact that I did it and it's done, it's out there. I don't have to be upset about it anymore. The other thing is, like I said, like success being the moving goalpost that it is, and it's based on learning. If I don't like, if it doesn't reach the people I wanted to reach, I can look at that and say, okay, well, what are things that I could have done differently with this? Is it the lighting? Is the video too dark? Is the concept not there? Is the caption off? Did I post it at the wrong time? Like these are things that could easily influence why things didn't work. Was there something else that was drawing everybody's attention? Outside things that change whether or not your little piece of content that you did one time trying to beat the entire algorithm is being visible. So I try to remind myself that I'm fighting against so many different outside stimulus, and it's not for me to be upset that it didn't break through the noise today.
You also said something that stuck with me, man, which is if I post a cool song, the most that somebody is able to content is, hey, this is a cool song. So
Yep.
yeah, can you speak more on that?
The thing with content and social media marketing is that it's always evolving as the tools get more advanced, as people get used to certain forms of content. So beat videos when they first started was really cool because people didn't have exposure to those things. Now there's so many people doing them it's like, okay, well, what else do you bring to the table? And I looked at it and I looked at my engagement. I'm like, I think I'm really good at performing. I think it shows in my videos. I think people know that I'm good at this, but it's still not garnering the same level of attraction or attention rather and engagement that I was getting before. So something shifted. So I need to look at that objectively and say, okay, so that's not a value. And that was the first thing that I thought, like, this is no longer a value to the people that I'm engaging with. So you shift and pivot to understanding that like social media presence as like an artist is about um your inherent value to your fan base versus I'm just showing you things. This is the stuff I'm doing. Look at how cool it is that I'm doing these things. That doesn't always register to people as something to care about because there's so many people doing that all the time. So when I started shifting to just trying to encourage people, trying to um, push out like my perspective on this whole thing. And the more I speak to people like you and other people on interviews and just like at shows, the more I realize that my perspective is a little bit more unique. Anybody's perspective is unique because all of us have our own life paths or whatever. But the more I recognized the value of my perspective was the more I was like, I should be sharing this with people more often. And it was less about I need to engage people and more about how do I be of value to the people that are paying attention to me.
You do. You've been sharing a lot around your perspective in terms of what I would say is largely like encouragement and trying to help people who are maybe doing something similar, really regardless of what they're doing, but trying to put some kind of positive thoughts in their head. So can you tell me what you think it means to be a positive community member and what you could, because we've also talked before about how a lot of us are focused on our thing and how we can get more of our thing out there and get attention on it. However, we don't talk as much about what we can do to help other people in a more direct way and how we can support what they're doing and be part of, contribute to the community in general.
I've been blessed to be around like social activists. I don't go as hard as they would, but they were able to provide like a unique perspective on how we show up for each other and the things that we do and the things we care about. And as a member of the community, I don't think you really can be a community member if you're negative all the time. I don't think you can be a member of the community if you're focused on you all of the time. And I do understand that we live a singular existence still. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna focus on me. Obviously, I'm me. I gotta survive. I gotta eat. But it's important to get out of this scarcity like mindset. This idea that like I can't share resources. I can't put somebody else on. And I think through those activists that I met, like they had put in my mind like this understanding of access, right, and privilege. Most of the people that gave me this perspective, they were women. So they were telling me about my privilege as a man. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a dude, but like I'm also black in America. I'm at a disadvantage. And like, yeah, but there are black women and black trans folk and black gay folk in America that have less rights than you. So your job is to try and help other people get to another place, like even the playing field. So I take that with me everywhere, right? Like I look at that from an opportunities aspect as well. Like if I have an opportunity, it's my job to at least try and bring in some trusted people in so they could also eat just even if it's a little bit off of what I'm doing, just eat a little bit and take that and spread it somewhere else. So with these encouragement videos, it's stuff that I tell myself all the time. It's stuff that's helped me, but it's not doing any good staying with me. You know what I mean? It's going to help more people if I can just spread it to somebody else. Even if it's one or two people, they'll take it and they'll go with it wherever they need to go with it versus it just sitting with me, helping me and not doing anything else.
So what can we offer to people as encouragement? Maybe they want to participate, maybe they have things to say, and maybe they're afraid to get in front of the camera or they're afraid to be seen. What can you offer to them in terms of encouragement?
So that's twofold. One is a technical and one is more of a encouraging, just an overall positive thing. So on the positive note, on the encouragement note, take a look at, I would say, the sum of everything that you've done up until wherever point you are at now. Look at that and understand that no one else could have taken those steps in that specific order and the times that they happened to reach where you're at. They could live your life like to the moment and still not reach your level of understanding of where you're at, your perspective. That's valuable. It's inherently valuable. There's only one you. So when you're focused on trying to be in other people's lanes or try to do something that isn't natural to you, talk about things that don't matter to you, that you don't care about, you're in somebody else's lane. You're invading somebody else's space, and your lane is wide open. And it's not going to be filled by anybody. So it's just wasted space. Your perspective is just sitting there empty, and you're not addressing it because you're trying to get into somebody else's spot. It doesn't make any sense. So have confidence that no matter what, your perspective is important because it has never existed before and it won't exist after. And then the technical thing is you got to remember that you don't see yourself every day. You don't hear yourself every day. Other people do, but you don't. So your perspective of those things are warped inherently. I just learned that recently. Like on a scientific level, I didn't realize that my perception of my voice is coming from vibrations in my chest. I didn't know that. So like when I hear myself speak, it sounds different than when it's out in a room reverberating off of walls and getting into somebody else's head. Similarly, like I'll never see myself outside of a reflection. So when I see myself on camera, of course it's gonna seem unfamiliar to me. I've built up an image to how I look and how I sound in my head. And when I look at it in its face, it's shattering that perception. So you have to be able to be gentle with yourself in these things and understand that like if I take baby steps and do 30-second intervals of being on camera or recording my own voice, I'll get used to it. And the more you get used to it, is the better you are at actually getting into that space more frequently.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just think it really speaks to you really like to break things down and try to see where maybe your biases exist, and you really try to break them down in a more objective way with a little bit of distance. And it's just really kind of cool to see that happen like over and over again because it clearly helps you move forward and break down problems. And I think it's a great strategy, and it's clearly working for you, man.
Yeah, I think like we get caught up in binary thought so often, and we don't leave room for the I don't know everything. You know what I mean? Like we think it's got to be yes or it's got to be no, and if it's not yes, it's no, and if it's not no, it's yes. But there's the middle, and that's where I try to exist in as frequently as possible.
I do want to say, man, as somebody who's just a legit fan of your music, and I think for any other producers that are listening, are there any? Can you speak to maybe some concepts or things that you've worked on or learned that have helped you achieve like the mixes that you have? Because in my personal opinion, your mixes are very strong, and I really, really like the sound that you create.
Appreciate that, man. As with the last question, there's a technical level, and there's the more emotive level of the thing. On the technical level, think about the song. Don't think about elements. Think about the song. As soon as you sit down to write music, think about what you're doing. Be intentional with it. Don't guide it to be something that it's not, and don't force it if it's not coming to you naturally. And when you do that, you're more intentional with the sounds you pick, and you're more intentional with the arrangements that you're doing, which leads to an easier mix long term. And once you start considering the song, you get rid of things that are not in service to the core idea of that song. So when I mix, the first thing I do is I'll get like a level arrangement of everything. I'll get all the volumes to like a relative level, but then I'll EQ the entire like bus channel or like the not everybody does two buses. I do two buses, but like on your master bus, you can EQ like the entire song. And when you do that, you're looking from a top down level. You're looking at it objectively. You're like, okay, there's some problem frequencies in my low. There's some muddiness in my mids. The highs are too much over here. And as you go deeper into the mix, like I do it in groups. So like I have my drum group, my bass group, my pad group, and my lead group. So once I've done the entire song, then I'll start treating the groups. Then I'll start treating the individual things. But I don't mix in a vacuum of a kick drum and a snare because those two things they're rarely ever going to be by themselves in a recording. So I think constantly in the service of how does this work cohesively in a song. And then from the emotive level, it's more about like you being true to yourself, doing everything to the highest level that you can take it versus trying to fit what somebody else is doing. When you're mixing, there's an unspoken battle between your boredom with the material, your objectivity with the material, and with your skill level, whatever that may be. So I think when you're more honest with that and say, okay, like this is what I can do. This is as best as I can get it. And I love that for what I'm doing. It's getting my point across. You're less hard on yourself versus like trying to figure out, okay, how do I make it sound like Dr. Dre's record? You're not gonna do that. There's no way you could do that. He had like top of the line sounds in a treated room and mics that are way above what you can afford right now. Unless you're like really like you got it like that. But when you look at these things from an objective spot of like, okay, this is my song, this is my idea, this is how far I can push it. I'm not willing to go with somebody else to mix it. This is as close as I got it, and I love where it's at. That is more important in your mixing than like any technical thing. Because there's a ton of technical advice I could give you or give anybody because I've learned a bunch. Shout out to Emilio Guarino. That's my guy. He taught me a whole bunch. Shout out to Rich DeChico and John White and Jason Agle. Those are all people that I worked for that taught me like the fundamentals of mixing. And Ben Envy. Yeah, like there's just so many people. Jerry DiLorenzo, I can name them all. They taught me the fundamentals of it, but more than anything, a mix is based on your identity, on the things that make you you. So if you can't already notice, there's a trending topic of being honest to who I am and where I'm at and everything I'm doing and not trying to be anything else. That's how you get to writer's block or like how you get to unachievable mix where you're trying to figure out everything to make it perfect. You're not being honest to where you're at, what you're feeling, and what the song needs.
I love it, man. Yeah, serve the song. Serve the song.
Yeah. Yep. Especially the producer, man. I work with live instrumentals all the time, and they'll be like, "This is so cool." I'll be like, "I'm deleting it. It didn't do anything for the song."
So before we get into some of these quick hits, man, I just want to ask, I definitely want you to talk a little bit about In Plain Sight so everybody can get a little bit so let's start there. Tell us about In Plain Sight.
That is community in action. In Plain Sight spawned from me not having the opportunity to play shows, then getting my first open aux show with Beat House. Shout out to Fresh Daily. Through that, meeting a bunch of people that felt similarly. Like, I want to be able to play more shows. Where can I go? And instead of looking on how to build upwards, like vertical growth, I looked at it as a horizontal growth. And I reached out to those people. Shout out Unusual, Thomas Piper, the Ism. Those are some of the people that were at like my first show. And I built with them to create a platform to keep on building upwards. Um, so that collective of people, me, Thomas Piper, Terry Power, Spacecraft on the Visuals, Annie Warhol, and Swing Low, that group of people is an example of what it means to build with people that are at your level and take it further every time versus trying to be aspirational and work with people who they might not be concerned with you. As a tangent, like I've had people ask how I do stuff with brands and how I work with people like that. I don't ask for any of those opportunities because when you ask for those opportunities, you're at the mercy of them. They're not planned to provide you these things. It's not in their budget or it's not in their ideas, like objectively speaking, that's not what they had in mind. So of course they're going to reject you unless they really have it, like they love what they heard. You're operating out of that space, but instead it's like you wait for these things to come to you and just be ready for them. So with In Plain Sight, an opportunity showed up to be in a venue through one of the people that used to work with us, Sum Total. He gave us the opportunity to be in a venue from a live stream that used to be in my mom's house, but we were ready to go. So we went and did that. And that upped our profile a little bit to a monthly residency. And then I had the opportunity to take my job at Korg and do a block party at the block I used to work at, or live on rather. I had the opportunity to take it In Plain Sight and turn it into a block party thing, but I was ready and I wasn't asking for something. I just kept myself ready and kept building up with the people I was with. So by the time I had the opportunity to do a show on Dub Lab, instead of thinking, how do I maintain this on my own? It was more like, I have a thing with people that is in service to the community. Let's take that and boost it up again. So it continues to grow with me. And as I grow and move, I can still be a service to the community that allowed me the opportunity to do this in the first place. And that's always on my mind.
And so what does it look like now?
So we're in talks about potentially doing like something quarterly or bi-weekly or maybe, or not bi-weekly, bi-monthly, maybe even monthly. at this place in Brooklyn. But right now it is a radio show on Dub Lab and a YouTube channel where we highlight our local artists and people that are in town, and we give them the opportunity to promote their album and to talk about things other than like the introductory level. You know what I mean? Like I had done so many interviews and podcasts in the past, and thankfully the more recent ones haven't been like this, where I'm just going over like what made me make music and what gear I'm using. And that's all cool, but when you think about how is that a value to the people that are listening to you, they're not going to want to hear you tell the same story all the time. So in plain sight was a way for us to just have creative conversation. And shout out to Annie Warhol. She's always bringing like these good questions that will spark tangents for us to go on. It gets more into process. It gets more into your personality. It unveils the fact that beyond the fact that we make music, a lot of us know each other. We have a rapport with each other. So it expands this universe of what the community is. And I think that's super important. That's why I started doing this in the first place, to just keep on building off of the community that already exists.
I mean, that's what's up, man. I mean, it really speaks to, like you said earlier, in terms of being a community member and contributing, getting people
You
together.
got to be active, man. You can't be a passive member of the community. You could be a passive person as a part of the community, but you can't be a passive member. You got to be active. There's got to be something you do beyond your own, station and the things that you're doing that is in service to that community.
Are there any other projects that you'd like to share and let us know that are either just dropped and or on the way?
Okay. So me and Shanoa, who you should definitely have on this show, that's also an incredibly talented producer and vocalist. And we
Mm.
have an indie project together where we're doing like experimental indie music, like similar to something like Sylvan Esso, if you're familiar.
Oh yeah.
Because I grew up with that. She's familiar with it as well. Like we love Subtract, we love all these things. So it's another avenue to explore just different music. So we're getting that ready to roll out. We've been working on that for a long time. Obviously, it's rinse and repeat season right now. We're in the midst of rinse and repeat season. Shout out Pootie. We got a whole bunch of stuff going on for that. And through Alpha Pup, I've got a J Dilla cover EP coming relatively soon. I think like it's in mastering stages right now, and by the time this drops, it should be announced at least. But if it's not, then the world heard it first. Like, but that should be coming soon. And other than that, I've got like Lucy's and remixes and stuff just peppered through the year. Oh, and I'm in album mode. I'm also in album mode. I forgot. I'm still in album mode, and I still have Lucy's with Flamingos. It's work, man. It's work. Like,
Yeah, that's what's up, man. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot happening. I'm excited. But yeah, everybody, if you haven't already, definitely go check the rinse and repeat with Nothing New and Pootie that just dropped. And look out for that
yes,
Dilla.
sir.
I'm definitely excited to hear these Dilla covers.
Yeah, man.
And like, and this man already has plenty of music just already out there. So if you're not already hip, like go check it out. This man has like all kinds of stuff. So with that, man, let's jump into some of these quick hits. Feel free to be as brief or as long-winded as you like. Which DAW do you use?
I'm an Ableton guy.
That made me think. So going back to the mixing for a second, do you mix in the same session that you produce? Is there a hard cutoff? Do you mix in Ableton also? Do you mix in something else, etc.?
I mix in Ableton too. I try to stay native to whatever I started in, like whatever project I started in. I think Ableton, it has its cons and pros and everything, especially revolving around like workflow. But I think the level of creative, like the level of creativity you can get with Ableton's internal plugins and its sampling algorithms, all those things lend itself to like a mixed process that can be a little bit more malleable, a little bit more elastic. Like I can do things differently and easier than in any other DAW.
And is there a hard cutoff when you go from production to mixing, or is it all in the same
What do you mean?
session? So
Oh,
does that make sense?
that's a good question. I think I let things happen naturally. Like I'll normally write like an 8 bar to 16 bar loop one day and come back to it, and I'll do like a arrangement day where I'm adding a whole bunch of stuff and taking away a bunch of stuff. And then I'll have a mix day where I'm really sitting down, because for me mixing normally takes about 2 hours, and that'll get me so close enough where everything else is just little minute tweaks. Shout out to formulas and templates, man. Figure out what you're looking for instead of trying to search aimlessly. Like if you know what you're looking for and you set up a workflow that adds to that, it makes the process easier. So mixing is always kind of a separate thing because by the time I've been producing, my ears are tired. I'm not unfamiliar with the song. Like I've lost objectivity. So whatever I'm doing in the mix is based off of my fatigued ear and my objectivity being down to nothing. So I try to come into it fresh.
Yeah, no, that was really insightful, man. Thanks for sharing that kind of look into your process. Your go-to
No
sound or
doubt.
instrument?
I have a long-standing love affair with Rhodes piano ever since I first heard it in the studio when I'm writing music. Of course, like drums will come down. I make music with drums, so that's not even a question. That's my primary instrument. But the thing that really excites me about writing music is starting with the Rhodes and letting it kind of organically move if it doesn't work with the Rhodes. But that's my first thing that I'm reaching for.
Nice. Is there particular roads that you go to?
So I have the Korg SV1 in my studio, and I love that thing to death. And I would say it was my go-to one, but realistically, Lounge Lizard or like the free ones in Ableton. I don't really work off of like the heavy stuff until I've identified the sound for what I'm working on. So that helps me think more about the quality of the chords I'm playing versus the tonal texture. Once I've understood like how I want it to feel, like what's involved in the chord progression, I can make different decisions about what instruments are carrying the tune. So
Interesting.
Lounge Lizard.
That's cool. And then aside from that, is there like a go-to plugin that you reach for?
Wow, it goes across the board. So in terms of making music, I don't really use so many plugins. It's not for anything other than the fact that I have a 2015 MacBook that is fighting for its life every day. So I use my hardware to my advantage in that and my disadvantage. But for mixing, I love RC20 in subtle amounts. I think people go overboard with mixing. The wet dry knob is there for you to pepper in something. And things like RC20, if you have different levels, like a little bit of RC20 on multiple tracks doing different things, it creates a much more sonically and texturally rich texture than just dumping RC20 in like max capacity. I love the Sound Toys plugins. I have an SSL EQ on my drums all the time. Transient Master is great, and Oxford Inflator. That's free game. Oxford Inflator is fucking top five. It's not two or five for attaining like loudness without losing dynamic.
And then, yeah, do you have a
Mhm.
favorite piece of physical gear?
Different things for different things, man. I love the push. Let me start with that. I have the push too, and I have it on wheels so I can roll it around my studio. And I love being able to control my session without being in front of a computer. So if I go to like keys, I can go play keys and still like pause and play for takes or whatever. Obviously, for live sets, I love the SP series by Roland. More recently, I've had the 555 and I think it's such a tactile piece of gear and it's such a spectacle more than anything else that it just breathes a new life into live performances. So those are my two.
Yeah, no, the SP555 is really cool. I've never had one, but one of my buddies does, and so I've gotten to mess around with it a little bit. Those are really cool. And the push, man, last night I randomly met somebody from Germany who is an industrial designer, and he worked on
Mhm.
the Push 3. It was pretty interesting. I was like, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like really, really
That's crazy.
surprising. Yeah. Three producers you think everybody could benefit from listening to, but you can't use: Madlib, Dilla, and I'm gonna throw Flylo in there as well.
Damn. I saw the brief that said I can't say Matt Burdell. I was like, ha, fly low time. I got you. You're done. Um, I think disclosure, number one. Disclosure because even though they make mostly dance music, you can hear the influences of so many other genres in their music. It's very like sonically rich and musically rich music. So that's that. Now I have to think of somebody that's not Dilla or Flylo or Madlib, and those are my top three. Let's say I'll say Alchemist. I think and not for the reason that everybody thinks of Alchemist. I think Alchemist's longevity is huge. The way his sound has shifted is huge. And I think his identity has remained consistent through all of those changes. And
Yeah.
that's really, really important. And it's something that I kind of, even though he's still in the hip hop space, he's
Sure.
done it through so many different little subgenres of it I carry that with me when I make music. I want to be me no matter what I'm doing. That's a good question. Got me floored a little bit with this one. I need a third. Not Madlib, not JD. Who else do I fuck with? Yo, you know what? I'm gonna say Doom. I'm gonna say Doom as a producer is someone that people should listen to. I think the way he developed his sound, when you listen to his rapping and his production, they pair so well together, obviously, because it's from the same hand. But that's another testament to somebody who is intentional and engulfed in what they're doing. So
Mhm.
they're not trying to shift too far from the identity they've established as a musician. Like Doom knows what he likes, knows what sounds good, knows what feels good. And even if when he started, he didn't have the technical chops to it, he knew how to get the most out of what he was working with. He wasn't trying to get thousands of dollars worth of gear to execute on that idea. Instead, he was taking the things that he knew and that he was familiar with and pairing it with his own sense of truth and with his own understanding of how he wants music to sound, and came up with such a gorgeous like presentation of his ear for production. And it's all caps when you spell his name.
That's right, man. If you haven't, yeah, for anybody listening, and I think I've said this on a previous episode, but if you haven't heard like Special Herbs, you know, and just listen to instrumentals from this guy, it's amazing.
So
Also,
important.
side
So
note,
important.
yeah, have you seen the Idea Generation episode with Alchemist?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it's so good.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. That's a cool series in general. If anyone hasn't seen that,
Such a good series. I love anything.
yeah, 100%, man.
Oh, I was gonna say I
Ev-
love anything that kind of adds that kind of perspective to a producer. It's influenced everything that I'm doing. Like understanding what they're doing helps me understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. It's just really well done, and it is. It's just cool to hear people's stories. You know, the stuff that maybe you wouldn't
Mhm.
hear, like you said, in maybe a more standard kind of interview process. Three favorite albums.
Voodoo by D'Angelo, number one. That is a timeless album that has not changed in quality since it's dropped. Everybody else is competing to do Voodoo, and they will never. Even D'Angelo won't.
Hmm.
The perfect album for me personally. On the hardcore side, pretty much everything by Misery Signals is so rich in harmony and dissonance and dynamic. Like their entire album run has been a master class in understanding how to utilize dynamics, harmony, changes, rhythm in a way that serves the song. So that's like, I would say on that list, Mirrors or Controller, those are two very heavy. So be warned, this is heavy, rah rah yelling music. But like this is stuff that really helped me understand the value of like giving a song dynamic so it breathes life into a song and into an album as well, something that goes straight through. One more album. These are good on the spot questions, man. Shout out to you.
I appreciate that,
Ah, you can't get me now. I can use Flylo. I can use Flylo on this shit.
man.
Uh, until the quiet came or comes or whatever.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
album is such a ride, and it says everything it needs to say in such a brief period of time. That's important to me as well, to tell like a sonically engaging story in a way that doesn't feel like it's dragging on without words sometimes.
yeah, man. I mean, I bought that one when it came out. Yeah, I love that one too. And Bureau actually dropped that as one of his
Mhm.
favorites as well.
Yeah, that is one of my that is top five, and it's not two through five favorite Flylo release for me.
So is that two?
That's three. Don't get me like that. That's three. Voodoo by D'Angelo,
Oh, I
which
miss. Okay,
realistically should
Voodoo. Yeah,
be
Voodoo. Yeah,
plots one through three,
yeah.
but
Okay.
I gave you grace and made it one. Um,
Dude, I love Voodoo too, man. Yeah, I mean, I still listen to Voodoo all the time. Somebody else you think I should talk to on this podcast?
I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again without being completely biased. Shanoa is an incredible producer. Um, I don't say it lightly. Like she's really building something unique. Her perspective is unique. It comes from a wide range of influences, and she's still very much focused in like dance and drum and bass. But she brings in like shoegaze elements, and she's been remixing like friends of ours in the metal scene. She's been remixing their songs to drum and bass stuff. So it's like her perspective and what she's doing with Bouquet, it's super important. That's her collective femme-based like music producers that do live shows. That what she's doing in that space is important. It's community driven, and her perspective on music is always engaging. And again, I'm trying not to be biased, but she's really good at this stuff. I would say Rex Mason, fantastic producer, all around dope person, unusual, brain orchestra. I can send you everybody's links because there's so many people.
Cool.
Posy Bell's another one. Posy Bell works for Building Beats, and that's a nonprofit that does a lot for youth music education in New York City. So she's somebody that would provide an interesting perspective in this. Yeah, those are what is like four. I gave you a bunch.
That's what's up. Yeah, no, I'll definitely hit you up offline and we'll figure this out, man. I appreciate it. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie. Damn. My favorite movie, it shifts so much. I would say I love Empire Strikes Back. It hasn't stopped hitting. It's still really, 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 really good. But I love watching all sorts of movies. I love a good heist. I loved Heat with Pacino and De Niro. I just finished talking about that on another podcast. Like I love everything that happened before we got into this age of streaming where like everything was trying to satiate the streaming model. I loved when movies took creative risks.
Mm.
And I cannot stress enough, I love a good heist. I love watching people rob shit. It's
Yeah.
amazing every time.
Yeah, what is it about that, man? Because I have to admit, I feel the same way. It's weird.
Well, heists are cool because you're number one, it's anti-propaganda. Like off the rip, it's
Yeah.
already going off of that. And then like you're rooting for the bad guy, which always like it's an interesting thing to root for the bad guy. You don't want them to get caught, even though you know they're doing something wrong. And it's suspenseful the whole ride. So I love a good heist.
You mentioned you're on another podcast. You want to tell us what that was in case anybody else wants to hear more from you?
We just did a whole run of different podcasts. So I was on a Gem Radio promoting Rinse and Repeat with Pootie. Golden Mind's Rec Show podcast. I was on that. That was a great interview. And of course, In Plain Sight.
Yeah, that's what's up. So if anybody who's been enjoying hearing this and you want to hear more from this man, go check out either the Rec Show or Gem Radio.
Or In Plain Sight. I'm there every first Thursday from 1 to 3 p.m. East Coast time on Dub Lab. Talking that talk.
In Plain Sight. And In Plain Sight has its own Instagram too, right?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I believe it's In Plain Sight _NYC.
Cool.
And then on Twitter, I believe it's In Plain Sight NYC with no underscore. And if you can't find it that way, reverse the order. I just can't remember which one is which.
Gotcha. Yeah. So especially if you're out in New York, but even if you're not and you just want to support music like this, go check out In Plain Sight as well. What character?
I would say especially if you're not in New York.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, if you're moving around and you're trying to like do stuff, let us know, man. We're trying to like be hospitable to people that are touring specifically because we want to be able to be a platform for people to talk about their music.
Oh, that's what's up. So yeah, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys? Is there an email? Do you prefer social media?
DM us on Instagram.
Hit these guys up on Instagram if you're making music and touring, and if you're just a fan, tap in and listen. What character from a book, movie, show, etc. do you most identify with?
I'm on my Goku shit right now, man. I'm heavy on my Goku shit. I'm training as much as I can. I'm in the hyperbolic time chamber. And even when I'm faced with insurmountable odds, I'm trying to enjoy it. I'm trying to really thrive in it because I know I'm going to get stronger from it.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say, man, before we get out of here?
Be unapologetically yourself. That goes for you, Taru. That goes for everybody listening. That goes for me. It's going to reflect on me whenever I hear it. Continue to be unapologetically yourself. There's only one you. There are no other lanes for you to be in. And when you leave that lane, your lane is now open.
Omar, nothing new. Man, your passion for music, man, your sense of community, what you contribute, like your thoughtfulness and like the rationality that you bring to the process and all of that, man, like just so cool to hear all that. I appreciate you sharing it. Thank you for being here with us. And I look forward to it, man, to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me. Peace.
Yeah, man. Like likewise, man. Yeah. So this has been Toru, and the way so are you. We'll catch you in the next episode of Producerhead. Peace, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Producerhead. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to drop a review and send this to a friend. It really helps Producerhead find its place and its people. Don't Don't forget to head over to torubeat.substack.com and subscribe. This is where you'll be able to find an organized consolidation of each episode of Producerhead along with transcripts. You will also receive the bi-weekly podium, a top 3 curation of my favorite things found on and offline over the past week. It's a 2-minute read that provides you with a personal soundtrack, ideas, and practical inspiration that you can use immediately. So tap in and receive the bi-weekly podium, a top 3 personally curated by me for free. Again, torubeat.substack.com, and subscribe so that you don't miss any updates from me and or Producerhead. That's it for this episode of Producerhead. I appreciate you coming through and being a part of it. My hope is that it helps you unlock a bit more creativity and find progress in a way that matters to you. The theme music is one of my own songs. It is called Room to Breathe and available now on all streaming platforms. Again, for real, thank you so much for being here with me, and I look forward to catching you in the next episode of Producerhead. This has been Toru, and in a way, so are you. Peace.